Hello. Hi, my name is Alex Farley. I'm the Program Associate at the Middle East Program, and I wanted to welcome you all here, welcome in the audience, welcome online to the event Iraq and the United States, a conversation with Iraq's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Fuad Hussain. Your Excellency, very warm welcome to you. And I would like to introduce to the floor CEO and President of the Wilson Center, Ambassador Mark Green.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wilson Center. As I remind audiences every chance I get, the Wilson Center is congressionally chartered, scholarship-driven, and fiercely independent and nonpartisan. And our unique status creates a special obligation, I believe, for us to focus on what's most important, on key foreign policy topics and opportunities to learn, which makes today's program especially appropriate. This year, we mark 20 years since the fall of Saddam's Iraq. In some ways, this period was born in hope, often shaped by outrage and tragedy, and yet it's a story still being written. Over these years, Iraq has witnessed cycles of violence that have taken too many innocent lives. And while there are still challenges on both the political and economic fronts, it's also clear that Iraqis are steadfast in rebuilding and strengthening the pillars of democracy. Since 2008, the Strategic Framework Agreement has formally defined the relationship between Iraq and the U.S. It's helped guide both countries in a region where stability and security, both physical and economic, are under continuous pressure and stress. Today, we are honored to host Iraq's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Fuad Hussain. Over the years, Foreign Minister Hussain has held a number of executive positions in both the Iraqi federal and Kurdistan regional governments. Most recently, before assuming his role as foreign minister, he served as Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs and Minister of Finance. Leading our discussion today will be the chair of our Middle East program, Ambassador Jim Jeffrey, one of the center's treasures. Ambassador Jeffrey served as U.S. Ambassador to Iraq from 2010 to 2012, along with countless other crucial assignments over the years. Today's discussion will not only focus on US-Iraq relations, but also the view from Iraq on the geopolitical and economic challenges and opportunities in the region. Mr. Foreign Minister, welcome to the Wilson Center. I believe you have chosen the right place for these topics. When Congress created us, it directed us to, in their words, strengthen the fruitful relation between the world of public affairs and the world of learning. So, Ahlan wa Sahlan. Got that right, Marissa? Thumbs up. Ladies and gentlemen, again, it's great to have you all here. We're honored to have the Deputy Prime Minister, and I turn the floor over to Ambassador Jeffrey. Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Mark. As a treasure, I wouldn't trade me in and hope you're going to get a lot back, but that was kind. Fuad, first of all, welcome here as the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of an important country, and also as a longtime colleague and friend. It's really good to see you here. A few introductory words. This audience doesn't need to be reminded of the importance of Iraq and its history as a center of the Caliphate and thus of the Islamic and Arab world for many, many centuries, with a reserve of hydrocarbons that almost competes with Saudi Arabia's as one of the centers of learning and history in the whole region. But for we Americans who have many, many important partners and allies, with Iraq, it's personal. It's personal because of the intensity of our relationships. We were, in an ironic way, informal allies during the Iran-Iraq war. We then were foes from 1990 to 2003. And then again from 2003, as Mark Green said, just 20 years ago to now, we have been very close partners, both in the rebuilding of Iraq, the reconstitution of its political system, and in particular in securing the security of the broader Middle East, because there can be no security in the region without a secure, stable, and prosperous Iraq. That is one of the lessons that we learned over the years. Again, it's personal for me. From the many years I spent either in Iraq or working on Iraq, it's personal for President Biden, whose son served in Iraq, and for millions and millions of other Americans who not only went there, but left and have today a feeling that their efforts with the Iraqi people were not in vain. Their efforts with the Iraqi people have helped open the door to a better future for both the United States and for Iraq. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Fuad. And once again, thank you for coming here and welcome.
Is it okay?
It is. It's hard. I do the same thing. I keep pushing this thing, but nothing happens.
Anyhow.
But it does work. They tell me it works.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. It is great to see you again. Good friend. And I remember sometimes we had tough discussion, but at the end we were able to find solutions. So, and we spent good time also together. Thank you very much for having me here, and I'm really happy to be here, to see you and to see so many friends. And I think, Jim, when you describe the relationship between the United States and Iraq as something personal, or it is a personal approach, I think you are right. So many people here, and especially in these administrations, they were for so many years engaged in Iraqi political affairs. Many of them, they were living there. And many others, they were engaged since, let's say, the time of the opposition, Iraqi opposition against the dictatorship. So Iraq was on the agenda here in this capital for the last 2 decades or 3 decades, in fact. So for 2 generations of politicians in this capital, they have been engaged in Iraqi political affairs. So that's why it is also a personal relationship between many Iraqis and many officials here. And that makes it easier for us, but also for them, to understand what's going on in Iraq. It makes it easier for us because they know a lot about the history, the background of the country. They know a lot about this Iraqi society, Iraqi economy, Iraqi political process. So it makes it easier for us. But at the same time, we have got also some difficulties because Iraq is playing an important role in the area. And in the region where we are, there are many, many issues, many problems. And some of these problems has also to do with other countries. And Iraq, in its relationship with other countries, is obliged to take geography into consideration, is obliged to take history into consideration, is obliged to take culture into consideration. At the end, the relationship between societies and countries is not only about economic ties, is not only about security partnership. It has also to do with history, with culture, with the religious, and these issues sometimes makes it difficult for Iraq, because at the end, Iraqi policy, Iraqi foreign policy is open towards Western countries. In fact, we consider many Western countries, we consider United States an ally. You were there when we had difficulties. You were there when we were fighting ISIS. ISIS was a threat to Iraqi society, and Baghdad was really under threat. Baghdad, the capital, was under threat of ISIS. Erbil, the capital of the region, was under threat of ISIS. So when we were under threat, you were there with us. Of course, with many other nations, with many other countries. But we fought together. And this creates, fighting together against terrorists, it creates special ties with each other, as well as, of course, the whole historical background. When we go back to period before 2003 and then 2003, so these ties, historical ties, they are all there. And this history created personal relationship with many leaders in this country. The president of this country, he was so engaged when he was vice president. In fact, the Iraqi file was in his hand for 8 years. The Secretary of State, the current one, visited Iraq, at that time Kurdistan, in 1991. He visited Kurdistan with the current president of the country when he was senator. So I'm talking about 1991. They pay a visit to Erbil, and President Biden now, then senator, he gave a speech in the parliament then. And then he came many times to the country. The current Secretary of Defense, General Austin, I think he was there for about 10 years. So imagine somebody 10 years being engaged and being involved, and of course in the fighting against ISIS. Now he's Secretary of Defense. I remember very good when we were discussing the plan of how to liberate Mosul from ISIS. And we had an operation center in Baghdad and one in Erbil. Sometimes I was going with President Barzani to Baghdad, and sometimes they were coming to Erbil. Prime Minister Abadi then, and Iraqi officers, generals, they were in the operation center or in Erbil. General Austin was there. He was guiding the plan how to fight together against ISIS and how to liberate Mosul. So when somebody has been engaged in all these events and all this process, of course, his emotional relationship, his psychological contacts with people there, the social contact with people there will stay. And that's in the benefit of the Iraqi government, but also in the benefit of both relationships. So it makes it easy for us to have access to the administration here. The question is not only about the old days. The question is about now, and about the future. How are we going to cooperate from now on, and how are we going to have the framework of the work for the future? In this visit, Jim, we were focusing on economic ties, because there was a period we were talking only about partnership in the field, in the fighting, partnership on security matters, partnership, how we can cooperate, partnership, what can we purchase for the military, training, advising the military. But now that is a small part of the what we need and what we want nowadays has to do with building or rebuilding our economy. This government is a government of paying a lot of attention to economic development, or trying to diversify the economy of the country. At the end, this government is a government to provide services to our people. Without providing services to our people, we will be in a big problem, because the expectation was high after 2003. But as you know, and many others know, that we were facing challenges, security challenges from 2003 actually until 2017 and 2018. Now that threat is not anymore there as such. So the main challenge for us now is how to build our economy and how to provide service to our people. The unemployment is huge among Iraqis. The majority of Iraqi population, they are young. And each year, we receive thousands and thousands of Iraqis who have been graduated from universities, and then they are asking us for a job. And the culture, the mentality in Iraq is still finding job by public sector is better to search for job in other sectors. But the reality is also there. The private sector is still very weak. So to build another economy and to change this structure, which depends heavily on public sector, is not so easy. Because at the end, we need to change the laws. Even if we are going to change the laws, we need to change the culture, the mentality. The mentality in Baghdad, and perhaps I, as a Kurd, who fought for a long time to have democracy in Iraq, but also to have decentralization system in Iraq and federal system in Iraq. I'm thinking in a different way, because I educated myself in a different way. I see the solution for many problems inside Iraq, especially on an economic level, has to do with choosing the right way to have a decentralized system in Iraq. Decentralization is the key for the solution of all these problems that we have, especially on an economic level. But when I am discussing these matters with some officials, I see still there are many obstacles because of the culture. So it is not only about laws. In fact, our constitution is a liberal constitution. So if we are talking about constitution, and that's above laws, then we have got a liberal constitution. But many articles in the constitutions, I can say about 50 articles in the constitution, has not been translated into laws. And even if they will be translated into laws, still we need to change the culture of centralism. Culture of centralism cannot fit with the constitution. So we have got two contradiction things. We have got a liberal constitution, but the culture still is centralist culture. There is one reason why it's not easy to have, let's say, the culture of decentralization, especially in economic fields. The reason I think Iraqi economy is depending heavily on one sector, is depending only on oil, as you know. So if the income, majority of the income, so we are talking about 88 to 90% of the income, is coming from oil, and oil is still centralized. Oil is still in the hand of the government. So how is it possible to have private sector and to have a liberal economy, to have market economy, while the main sector and the main pillar of the economy is in the hand of the government? The question for the future is it possible to have active private sector in the fields, in this field? So I'm talking about oil. Is it possible? Because for the Iraqis, when they are talking about oil, they are going back to the day where in 1972, I think, when at that time the Iraqi government nationalized the oil sector. So it was the oil companies playing at that time or before that an important role in this sector. But the whole policy has changed. And they were calling it, of course, socialist system. So to transfer the economy from so-called socialist system into market system, we need many things. First, laws. Second, implementing laws. But third, changing the culture. Here we are talking about others who can help us. We need know-how, we need technology. Of course, when you want to cooperate with others in these fields, in the first place you are going to the friends of the country. And the United States is a close friend of Iraq. Now you have got a lot of knowledge about Iraq and this country. In the beginning it was difficult. Many other European countries, they knew more about Iraqi society, Iraqi history, Iraqi culture, Iraqi economy. But nowadays, because of this relationship, it goes back to 3-4 decades. Here in Washington and in the United States, there are many expertise, many government officials, they know a lot about Iraq. So we need you there in the first place, because you asked me before coming in that you are going to ask a question about what can United States do for your country. In the first place, we need you for this process, for this change. It is not easy for us to do it alone. But we need you also for the threat which is threatening us, but also threatening many other countries in the area. And in fact, it is a threat to the humanity, to the world, which has to do with climate change. So we need you also to help us there, because there is a real threat for our future. The climate change, it is not only, has not only to do with Iraq, but the whole region. But we need you to help us. And when we are talking about the effects of or threat of the climate change, there are some issues which has to do with us. So I call it man-made disaster. The flare gas and burning the gas has nothing to do with climate change. That's man-made disaster. In Iraq, the gas has been burned for the last 70 years. Actually, when in 1928, oil has been found in Kirkuk, since then the gas has been burned. And this created huge, and now in Basra, of course. This is a threat to the nature. It is a threat to the health of the people. But also we are wasting it. It can be it can bring huge income for the Iraqi government. So we are trying to transfer Iraq to become also a gas country, to capture gas in the first place, but also to invest in fields of gas so that we can use our gas in a proper way. And as you know, we are depending on others in purchasing gas so that we can have our electricity while we can produce our own gas. These are some of the challenges that we are facing, and I'm sure you are aware of these issues all. You have been engaged for a long time, and you were there in Iraq, and you are following the process since you left Iraq. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing, and we are here to talk about all these issues and many others so that we can continue our cooperation, continue our partnership, not only to fight ISIS, but also to build our economy and to build the future for the next generation in Iraq. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I have to say, since my first professional engagement in the Middle East in Tunisia 45 years ago, it is extraordinarily rare to hear an official from the region talking about decentralization as the way forward. In fact, it's usually the opposite. But I have seen it work in Iraq, as has Fuad, because he has helped make it work. Now, we always think of the crown jewel of that in Iraq, which is, of course, the Kurdistan Regional Government, but I've seen it work elsewhere. I've seen it work in Najaf, at times in Basra, in Kirkuk, and in Mosul. And one thing that is also important is, even in other countries in the region that have democracies, or they have elections, and there are a number. In Iraq, the local officials are also elected by the people, the governors, and this gives the whole flavor of politics and progress in Iraq a different tone, and it is very hopeful in the long run. Okay, I'm still going to ask that question. I know that you have a strong relationship with USAID in dealing with issues like development of the country and construction, working to reduce unemployment, the currency. What are some of the things you think USAID could help with here?
No, of course, in the first place, they are there. We are cooperating with USAID. And we are going to see them, I think, tomorrow or today, I don't know. But they can do a lot, and they are there, I may say. They are in Mosul. They are in various other areas. They are doing great job. So we are very much satisfied about their work. And we are going to discuss some issues with them tomorrow. I don't like to talk about it now, but we are going to discuss various issues with them, various projects with them. But we are very much satisfied with their work in Iraq.
Good. You've been leading a diplomatic effort with other Arab countries. There is the initiative that Egypt and Jordan have taken with you, and I know relations with the GCC have always been an important issue for Baghdad. You recently sponsored the Gulf soccer championships in Iraq. How do you see your future with these other Arab states?
Jim, Iraq has suffered because of the wars. In fact, I say it and I repeat it, that Iraq was a victim of fights and wars for 50 years. So we have got 3 generations and perhaps 4 was being born and grown up within the culture of war. And usually the wars and fightings, they were internal and external with the neighbors. So we want to have normal relationship with all our neighboring countries. And I may say we succeeded. Mm-hmm. We have got problems with some neighbors But at the same time, we have got good relationship with all of them. While some of them, they are in conflict with each other, yet we are able to bring them together around a table in Baghdad. And we did that. In Baghdad, one was a gathering of the neighboring countries, and they were various countries. They were in conflict with each other, but they came to Baghdad and they were talking through us with them, with each other. And we had a second Baghdad conference in Amman, and we are planning for the third one, and I think it will be in Baghdad. Why are we doing this? In the first place, it has to do with the Iraqi interest. When the region will be with less tension or less conflicts, it is good for the region in the first place. But our security has to do with the region. We cannot guarantee our security alone without having the security in the region. So security in the region is collective security. When Iraq was not secure, all these countries, they were not secure. In fact, the world was not secure. When ISIS terrorists occupied 1/3 of the country, it was not only a threat to Iraq, but it was a threat to the whole region. In fact, it was a threat to international peace. Many capitals in the West, they became also the theater of the terrorist attacks. And these terrorist attacks has been organized and planned there inside Iraq. So security in Iraq is not an issue only for Iraqis. Of course, it is the responsibility of the Iraqi government and Iraqi officials. But at the same time, if others, they are trying to create an unstable situation inside Iraq, that means at the end, they will create an unstable situation inside their own countries. Mm-hmm. Unstable Iraq is a threat to the whole region. So on the basis of these points, but also on the basis of the fact that Iraqi political system since 2003 became an open system, and Iraqi society is an open society, the influence of the other countries are touchable inside Iraqi politics. So to have less tension inside Iraqi politics, to have less tension in our parliament, to have less tension between the parliament and the government, to have less tension among the Iraqi political parties, we are obliged to manage this not only internally, but also to cross the border to manage it from outside. Mm-hmm. So this interaction between internal politics in Iraq and external, in this case regional politics, oblige us to have good relationship with neighboring countries, and also oblige us to build bridges between some of these countries who are in conflict with each other. And that's why we started and we took the initiative to build bridges between the Saudis and the Iranian. In fact, for a while, we created an atmosphere of having talks between Egyptian and other countries, Jordanian and other, Turkey and some other countries. So we were doing this. Mm-hmm. We were doing this, and we will continue that. First, for the interest of Iraq. Second, for the interest of the region. Because if we can cooperate together, we can develop our economy. Iraq, because of this experience of war, we are always thinking about an alternative. When there are conflicts, we never think about going to war again, because we know the results. Mm-hmm. We studied the history. So dialogue is the way to solve the problem. Peaceful means is the way to solve the problems. We are not threatening any other countries. Sometimes some others, they are threatening us, creating problem for us. Still, we are going to them. When they create problem for us, we approach them. When they create problem for us, we say, let's talk. We don't have an alternative except to talk. We build good relationship with all neighboring countries, but we are also balancing relationship. So we have got good ties with Tehran and with Ankara, but we have also good ties with Jordan and Egypt and all Gulf countries. During this period, the last 2-3 years, our relationship with the Saudis is excellent. But that's valid also for all other Gulf countries.
Great. Good ties are important, and it's really phenomenal the way several Iraqi governments in the last few years have worked on this. But countries come in two flavors, those that are one way or another not having an impact internally, and those which you alluded to diplomatically that do. Let me focus on 3 of your neighbors. To your west in Syria, you still have the threat of the Islamic State. The briefings I've received on the Islamic State indicate that it remains still internationally a threat, both in Syria, in Iraq, and beyond. With Turkey, of course, you have first the presence of the largely Turkish PKK movement and Turkish operations against the PKK in northern Iraq. And, of course, you have a very complicated relationship that you alluded to with Iran. How do you deal with these specific problems? Is there some way that the rest of the Arab world, the United States, the EU can help you, or what would you like from us?
Sometimes we need your help. Sometimes we say, please.
I was fairly sure we'd hear that.
Please help us the other way, in different way. Syria and what's happened in Syria is also a threat to us. That's why if you look to the Iraqi foreign policy towards Syria, we were really worried about this. Let's say involvement of many other countries in Syrian affairs. At the end, what is the strategy? I had frank discussion with European officials, Joseph Borrell and others. I said, what is your strategy about Syria? Tell me. First explain what do you want, so that I can tell you where I stand. Mm-hmm. What is the strategy of the United States towards Syria? Can you tell me? What's your policy? What do you want? Do you want to remove the regime? For a while you wanted. And now no. Okay, what do you want? You tried. You failed. That's also valid for European. They were saying, no, we are going to change the regime. And that is now for 11, 12 years, right? They wanted to remove the regime. But what happened? They removed the people. About 8 million Syrians, now they are refugees in Europe and somewhere else. So the people left, not the regime. The regime is there and the people left. There is something wrong, Jim, in the approach towards Syria, in the Western mind and also here. If you follow the process, the American policy, but also European policy towards Syria, they made many mistakes. And then at the end, I'm not talking about the regime is good or bad, but at the end, what happened? Syrian infrastructure, social, economic, everything has been destroyed. About 8 million Syrians are in diaspora. They are living abroad as refugees. Iraq has got 250,000 refugees from Syria. They are staying in Iraqi Kurdistan since 2011, and they cannot go back. So I don't see clear policy, neither here nor in Brussels, about what the Western powers want from Syria. But Syria has been destroyed. There is a threat of terrorism in Syria, and terrorists, they are still powerful inside Syria. Besides that, we have got a whole camp and many prisoners, leaders of ISIS who are in prison in Syria. And if they will be free, added to those terrorists who are active, that will create a threat not only to Syria, but it will be a threat to us. That's why for us, in the benefit of Iraqi security, but Syria is also our neighbor, we hope that the security in Syria will be different, and that the solution for Syrian conflict will be found. I understand now the conflict in Syria is not anymore local. It is a local one, it is a national one, it is a regional one, it is an international one. So to find solution for Syrian problem, that means you need all these actors. So you have got non-state actors inside. Some of them, they are terrorists. But you have got state actors, which has to do with all neighboring countries, many countries, Turkey, Iran, Israelis are there. International actors, the American, the Russian are there. So how can we approach and solve this problem? From our side, we appealed in all meetings, Arab League meetings, that it will be better to have Syrian government back to the meetings so that we can discuss also with Syria. It is impossible to find solutions for Syrian problem talking with all others, but without having the government or the regime still there. Once again, when I'm talking about talking, that doesn't mean I appreciate what the regime of Assad has done. But I'm talking about realpolitik. We need a stable Syria. If we can participate in this process, we are ready. But it is also up to others, United States, Russia, Turkey, in this case, Iran, to choose different paths to find solution for Syria. Syrian people are suffering. You see, they were suffering, but now more because of the inflation, because of this international economic crisis. They are really suffering. We are punishing Syrian people. I mean, the international community. As for Turkey and PKK, this is an old story, it's coming back. PKK Kurdistan Workers' Party, started the fight. They themselves, they were calling it armed struggle in 1984. And they started their fight inside Turkey. In 1991, when no-fly zone has been established, it was possible for some fighters of PKK to enter the area and to establish bases in the remote mountains inside Iraqi Kurdistan. So they are there since 1991. Of course, after the change of the regime, 2003, and having Iraqi constitutions, Iraqi government is committed to the constitution. And the constitution of Iraq is not allowing any other groups to attack another country from Iraqi soil. This is part of the constitution. So we are respecting our constitutions and we are trying to implement these articles. But PKK, they are in the remote mountains and it was not possible and is not possible to to attack these areas military-wise, and we, as I mentioned, we don't want to be once again in fight. So we must think about different solution, how to deal with PKK inside Iraq. We don't accept PKK as a military force inside Iraq. This is one of the principles. But how to find solution for having a military force or group inside Iraq, that is a problem for us in the first place, not a problem for Turkey. Having said that, I don't think the Turks has got the right to attack us. This is violation of international law. Of course, they are depending on self-defense. They go back to the charter and they use Article 51, and they say this is in the framework of self-defense. But as you know, self-defense, it's not that everybody choose when there will be an attack, and then you say it is self-defense. You must go back to the Security Council. You must study it. Besides that, we, as the Iraqi government, we are ready to cooperate with Turkish side to find solution for this problem. A solution cannot be founded through attacks from Turkey on Iraqi territory. This is not solution. This creates more complication. But the relationship between Turkey and Iraq is not only about PKK and military operation. Of course, when we look to our trade ties with Turkey, we are purchasing from Turkey for about $20 billion on annual basis. So trade relationship with Turkey is huge. Many companies on the other side of the border. Unfortunately, it is the areas where the earthquake happened. And of course, our condolences. We were really shocked. And Iraqi government decided directly to help those people, the victims, and we are still continuing sending help. And Iraqi people also collected many items, and the solidarity with Turkish people is there. So many companies which were exporting to Iraq, they are on the other side of the border. And they depend only on export to Iraq. Mm-hmm. So the trade relationship is huge with Turkey. And we are trying to reach understanding even about managing the water. We had some problems about our share from the water. The main two rivers, Iraqi rivers, their sources are coming from Turkey. We had some problems, but even that, we were talking, we are discussing with the Turkish side. So at the end, we consider Turkey as our partner. Mm-hmm. Even if there are some problems there. But I think these problems, especially security problems, can be only solved through talks, not through military means. That's perhaps the difference between us and Turkish side. With Iran, the ties is different. It is a fact that we have got political parties inside Iraq, ideologically, or they have got sympathy with the political system. This is normal. I mean, when you have ideological ties. And some people, they are liberals. They have got ideological ties with liberal people in the West. Some people are communists. They have got ideological ties with China now. In the past, they had ideological ties with the Soviet Union. So when we are talking about ideology and culture, that's a different issue. And inside Iraq, we have got that. But the decision-making process, the whole process is in Iraq. But the decision-making must be in Iraqi hands about Iraq. Decision on all fields must be taken by Iraqis and inside Iraq. We are frank with the Iranian side. When there are some issues, problems, usually we go to Tehran and we tell them this is not acceptable. We can cooperate. We can be good neighbor. But we are not an attachment of any other country, including neighbor country. At the end, Iraqis must have their decisions in their hands. And this process is continuing. I mean, the process of building or having the decision in the hands of the Iraqis themselves. Of course, it is easy to talk, we must decide just like that. But going back to this history from 2003 and until now, we know why other countries are intervening, who were there, why they were there. But the process, this process of building a framework which has to do with the Iraqis and the decision must be in Iraqis' hand is continuing. And I see it on daily basis. I see it because I have been in 3-4 cabinets as members of the cabinet that change every day, every time. At the end, we will reach that stage. But interaction between these countries will be there, even in this process of taking decision. That interaction is different than others are going to take decision for you. So decision-making process gradually will be in the hands of the Iraqis about all these strategical issues.
Thank you. If you permit, we'd like to have a few questions from the audience. We've got a little bit of time, and Marissa will moderate.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm just going to ask the first question from our online audience. We have a few that came in, but since you've already discussed the unemployment challenge, particularly amongst Iraqi youth, job prospects and access to finance for young Iraqis is often based in family, ethnic, or political connections. How can the government address this to democratize opportunities?
You see, social ties, social structure in Iraq, of course, is different than many other countries, especially it's different than Western countries. Social structures is there. But we recognize that Iraqi youth are suffering from unemployment. Mm-hmm. So to create opportunities for job, until now, unfortunately, is the task of the government. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the problem. I mean, to create opportunity for jobs. And while I was Minister of Finance, we were paying the employees about 43 trillion dinar. That can be at that time perhaps $40 billion. Only payment to the employees of the government. I think now, with the new budget, the draft which we are discussing, perhaps it will reach $62 billion. And as I mentioned, our income is depending on oil price. Mm-hmm. So if oil price will go down, how can we pay all this? Mm-hmm. So this is a dilemma for us. I mean, all young people, when they graduate, they want to they are approaching the government and they want to have a job there. For simple reason, I think part of it has to do with the culture, because people, they think if you are going to work with the government, then you will have guarantee for the future. Mm-hmm. guarantee when you will retire, guarantee for everything. So they don't see working in the private sector as such. But the second point has to do with the fact that private sector is weak. If we had a powerful private sector and an alternative economy, then those people, it was easy for young Iraqis to find job there, not to approach the government. That's why I'm talking about diversifying the economy, building different sectors, decentralizing also the economy policy. Decentralizing, I was appealing when I was Minister of Finance, decentralizing the financial system. Give the authority to the governorate. Give the authority to others. Not everything must be decided in the center. Thinking is in the center. Planning is in the center. Implementing is in the center. What about others? That will solve part of this problem, to be honest. It will solve part of the problem, but solving the problem of unemployment, and in this case, the problem of the young people inside Iraq, inside Iraqi society, has to do with building an alternative economy, and we can build our economy in different way. I was talking about gas sector, but also agriculture, tourism, services, healthcare must be different, education must be different. So all these fields can be dealt with, and to manage it in different way, and then we can create opportunities for the youth.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And as you mentioned earlier, it's not just about reforming the laws, but it's about implementing them and changing mindsets. I'd like to invite members of the audience to submit to ask your questions. Dr. Halis Vendiari, who's a distinguished fellow.
Mr. Minister, you mentioned that the decisions must be taken in Iraq by the Iraqis, and I'm sure you put it on the table every time you meet with the Iranians. What do the Iranians want from you, both domestically and foreign policy?
No, of course, the Iranian officials and the Iraqi officials, when they discuss with each other, in the first place, they are expressing their views from their own interests. So when the Iranians are discussing matters with us, it has to do with their own interests. It has to do with their own policy. When they discuss with us, let's say, the relationship with the West, in this case with the United States, of course, their point of view is different than ours. But we are telling them, this is your interest, but our interests ask us to do something else. We have got common areas, but we have got also differences. Common areas has to do with mutual interest. Economic ties, cultural ties, being neighbors, security in the area is our common interest. Oil prices, sometimes our common interest. We are both members of OPEC. But there are some differences, especially in foreign policy. Of course, their position is well known, is different than ours. So on these fields, we have got differences. So it is not about what the Iranian want. They are expressing their own view, and we are expressing our own view. When we agree together, then it is about policy of both countries. When we don't agree and differ on some issues, then we are frank and we are telling each other anyhow. From our side, we are telling them that that's not possible because that's against the Iraqi interest. And I may say, nowadays, they respect what we say.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Marina Ottaway, please. Just wait for the mic, Marina.
You mentioned the problem of the gas being flared. You repeated, you made another reference to the problem of gas now. Can you explain why this has proven so difficult, that problem is not being tackled? I have been hearing about this problem of gas being flared ever since I started paying attention to Iraq. And it seems to me that it's not an issue where there should be cultural problems. I don't think there is any belief systems that believes it's important to flare gas. Can you explain why it's proving so difficult to tackle that problem?
Ma'am, I have got family members in Kirkuk. And when I was child, then I'm talking about when I was 6 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, usually during summer vacation, I was spending my time with my other branch of the family in Kirkuk. And I was seeing this fire as a child. I couldn't understand what's going on. Why there is always, when I am coming there, there is a fire. I didn't know, but I started to ask my family members. They said, this is gas and burning. I said, why? It is always burning. Why? What's going on? As a child, I didn't understand. Now I am 74. And when I got to Kirkuk, still the fire is there. So I am still trying to have the answer why we are burning our gas. Okay? To be honest, sometimes I had this discussion with some specialists on this. In the past, perhaps, they said, okay, oil is important. What can we do with gas? Or perhaps they didn't have this expertise. But we cannot say that we didn't have expertise, for the last 20 years. I think we ignored that. We ignored it. It is our fault. It is our fault. Perhaps some people, they were thinking, okay, we have got oil, it is more expensive to invest in gas and then what to do with the gas. But now we are paying the price. People of Basra, they are paying the price. Do you know, cancer has been spread in Basra, and many people, they say, part of it has to do with this burning the gas. But we are also paying the price because we know what gas has done to our environment. But we are paying the price because now we are depending on others. We are purchasing gas from Iran. Gas, we are buying gas and electricity from Iran for $4 billion in a year, on annual year. So imagine if we had our own gas, then we had our own electricity, then we were not paying, then we were benefiting. I blame nobody else except ourselves.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We are at 11:05, so I don't think we have time for any more questions. But thank you once again for joining us at the Wilson Center. And Ambassador Jeffrey.
Excellency, if there's anything you'd like to finish with, the floor is still yours, but it's your time, sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you, and thank the people here and those who were watching us, listening to us, seeing us. Thanks a lot, and we hope that in near future we will see each other again, and I would like to invite you to Baghdad.
I may make it there. Thank you.
Thank you.